As the crown of Yah's creation, we are losing our grip on His righteous reality. As I was thinking about the passage where the Mashiach began to have a conversation about these kinds come out only by prayer and fasting. And a lot of times people are thinking, oh, I just need to go on a fast so that I can cast it out, or I just need, but it is really not about the act of fasting, it's about what that fasting brings. It resets the energy. It keeps the energy field where it needs to be, so that when you're combating this other kind of energy, you're the authoritative energy over it, and it understands that it's subordinate to you. This is a discipline. This is what Pesach and Unleavened Bread is about the repositioning of us so that we're walking this thing out in its fullness, because we understand that we cannot remain in the prototype phase. We have to go to full production now. And this is where we're going. So ready or not, here it comes. The question now is, do you know your lines? Have you been to the rehearsals? You know, many of you haven't even been to the rehearsals. You knew about the rehearsals, but you didn't show up at rehearsals, but you want to show up on the stage and begin to operate and activate and all of this. And what are we operating and what are we activating in if we've never made a rehearsal and we haven't read the script? Everything is being turned upside down. Everything is being released right now. The sons are being released. Things that were locked up in diabolic underworlds are being released. Now, what are you going to do? The house must come to order. It must come to order, and you must take on the discipline of bringing it to order. You know, they're talking about the church house. We're talking about your house, your physical edifice. You've got to be the Lord of that land. Good evening, family. How's everybody doing? I'm glad you're here with us this evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are just one more day before the end of this beginning, for the end of this beginning. And this is the seventh day, and I'm excited about day 7. It's a Sabbath review. We're going to look at some things, go back over some things, and I really want to do some questions and answer stuff today. I don't know who's on with me, but I want you to get your questions ready. I want you to write in the chat room what some of the highlights were from what you got this week. Just write some things down. If it's one word, if it's a phrase, write it down, because we need to recall, we need to remember. And that's what the Sabbath is all about. It's about a reflection. It's about looking back over what was instituted, what was created. What did the Father create in us this week? What kind of expectancy, what kind of desire, what kind of appetite was created in you this week? Just take the time to write it in the chat, because we need to reinforce the things that were created and the things that were given in this hour, because that's how you hold on. The Bible talks to us about, listen, remember the things lest you let them slip at any time. You don't want nothing to slip. You got to remember it. And how you remember it is you go over things and you connect things that are relevant to you to those things, so that you can hold on to those things. You know, Pesach and Feast of Unleavened Bread are powerful beginnings for us. This is what the word declared to Moshe and the children of Israel. He said, this will be the beginning of months for you. And we know that beginnings are also a result of something having to be renewed, something having to go in a new direction. Beginnings are that opportunity for the sons to step into a flow. And we know that time is not linear as most of us see it. We see it from this point to that point. And that's the thing that holds us up. That's the thing that holds us back, because we're only looking as far as we can see to the next point, right? It's like driving on the road and you're looking for the signs for the next gas station, right? And you can see it, but you don't know that beyond that is the rest stop. You don't know that beyond that is the truck stop, because that's where I prefer to stop if I'm on the road. I don't prefer to get gas at the gas station. I prefer to get to the truck stop because that way I know I can eat. I know it's a whole bunch of stuff I can do. I can rest, the whole nine. But it's having uh not just this vision that's just seeing things right in front of us, but when we're dealing with prophetic vision, when we're dealing with the things of Yah, the Moeds, we're dealing with something that the Father's given us, that's giving us an access to something that's far beyond what we can naturally see with our physical eyes. Blessings, AK. Far beyond that. And this is why this is so dynamic. The things that we've talked about this week should have been very enlightening to you, for you to identify who you really are and the place that you're supposed to be living from. We're not living from a place that is behind an eight ball. We're not living from a place of sin. We're living from a place of righteousness and reset. And when we understand that, that's something you want to maintain. A lot of people are still trying to get to a spot. They're still trying to get to a spot because they don't understand they've been given the spot. Because they're trying to qualify for something that they could never qualify for. If it wasn't given, if the Mashiach hadn't given it, none of us would have it. None of us would have it. Blessings, Elder Vicky. I see you in the room. So we're grateful this week that we realize in an even greater way that we're not trying to live from behind the eight ball. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. We're living in the position of freedom. We're living from the position of regeneration. We're living from the place of dominion. We're living from the righteous position. We're living from the seated place, that heavenly seat that's been given to us. That is something that was given. And I promise you, I'm going to live from that place. Because you know what? Here's the truth. We don't always have a million moments to get stuff together. And this is why I love the Father, because when we do what we're supposed to do, when we are engaging in the relationship, no matter what comes up, no matter what happens, he's always standing there, making sure that we are able, if we can see him, we can follow what he's saying. If we can see him, we can hear what he's saying. We can do what he's doing. And that's the beauty of living this kind of life. A lot of people don't think they're ready for so many things. They don't think they're ready. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for that. The Father didn't look for a perfect vessel, as far as no flaws, or unflawed vessel, I should say, but he looked for somebody perfect. And what perfection deals with is maturity. He's looking for somebody mature enough to say, I know I need the Father. I'm not trying to do any of this by myself. So therefore, because I have him, because he lives in me by way of his spirit, then I can do all things. I can do anything that I need to get done that he's commanded me to do, because he lives in me. So I have all the answers to the questions that need to be asked. I have answers to things that I don't have a clue about right now until I get there. When I get there, though, I'm going to know which direction to go. I'm going to know how fast and how slow. You hear what I'm saying? People are trying to find out all the little bits and pieces, and they're not walking out the thing that the Father's commanded them to walk out. This is a very important time. These moeds are very important. And I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of people that are engaged in the pagan activities this year, and they are so missing this moment. They are so missing the opportunity to serve Yah. They're so missing the opportunity to really relate with him in a way that he will respond. And then you don't have to make anything up. You don't have to make it up that he gave you a new car when you can't afford it. You don't have to make that up, because he's going to make sure that you have the payments. He's going to make sure that you have what you need. We're stepping into a space that is so wide in this season. When you think about the children of Israel and you think about them coming out of that captivity, see, it was one thing. Got to understand, these are generations and generations later after, Israel and after his sons, after Joseph and his brothers, right? And when they came into Egypt, they were given a space, but it was nothing like the promised land. It was nothing like that. They were given a space, though, and sometimes we could get so comfortable with the space that we were given that was no longer causing us some kind of objection, because remember, they left the promised place because they needed to go to Egypt because of the famine. And in the time that they left that promised place and went to Egypt, all of those years that they were there in Egypt, living the life, quote unquote, right, away from the famine, that land that they were in was massively overrun by other nations, massively overrun. But what I love about the Father is that when he makes a promise, I've had this saying since I was a little girl. The Father used to always tell me a promise is a promise. When we would have our conversations from the time I was a little girl until now, that's a thing with me. A promise is a promise. And I know that if the Father promised me something, it is going to come to pass. The thing that has been happening with me all of my life is just me coming to a place of maturation, in a place that I can be the person that I need to be for the place that he's taken me. That's what the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover were all about. He was preparing the people for the place that he was taking them. That meant that they needed to be able to follow simple instructions. Listen, get a lamb. Get a lamb on the 10th day. Find the lamb. It needs to be a year old. It needs to be enough for the household. And if the lamb is too big, then join another house and you're going to get enough. All of these things. Take the blood and put it on the doorpost and go inside. Right? Go inside and wait, because at midnight he had a whole instructive and directive for them, and all they had to do was follow it. And because they were able to follow it, this death passed over them, because he was bringing them from death to life. That's what I love about the scripture. All of it works together. When I see one thing in one scenario, I can identify the next thing in the next scenario. Because when I look at that death to life situation, I'm looking at what salvation looks like. I'm looking at what this born again experience looks like. It looks like I'm going from death to life. And when he deals with coming from death to life, so somebody might say, well, don't that mean that we were sinners first? No, it means that you're awakening to your righteous place. You're coming out of the dead thing, because the culture that we live in, and the family family culture alone that we live in, has instructed us in a way. Some people might have been called bad their whole life. They weren't bad. You're not bad. You're learning. And that's a thing for me. When I tell you I can't stand a grown-up calling a child bad, it gets on my nerves. You know why? Because children are in a learning process. And this is the same way that the Father has seen us our whole lives. You're learning. And as you are learning and as you're growing, you may encounter or have some experiences with some things that seem very hurtful, and a number of different things that seem very uncomfortable. But the word declares from two witnesses that I know of, at least the Mashiach and David, said, I learned from the things that I suffered. David said it like this: it was good that I was afflicted, that I might learn. The Mashiach said, I've learned from the things that I suffered. And this is all a part of the growing place. This is all a part of growth. So a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I'm just a sinner saved by grace. It's not written. I'm sorry, it's not written. I know you would like to think of yourself that way, but I don't see myself that way, because that's not the way the Father sees me. And when we begin to step into how he sees us, then we become what he's declaring that we should become. From the beginning in Genesis, he said, let us, he's talking to the council of the gods. If you don't believe me, look at Psalm 82. The council of the gods, and he says, let us make man in our own image and after our own likeness. He said, I'm going to make them like us. And what do gods do? And how do they function? What is their character? What does that look like? Because the very thing that he told mankind when he created and formed everything that he desired to create and form in a man, and he said, let them have dominion. This is the place, the becomers, the sons of God, the Son of Man. This is this new creation paradigm that we don't have to be in this place of shrinking back, and we don't have to be in this place of living from underneath a rock, trying to see if Yah will shine on us, if he will allow us, just to be in a space. No, he's saying this is your space. Wherever you step into that I've commanded you to be, that is the space that I'm calling you to, for you to shine, for you to take authority, for you to walk in a specific light, the light of the gods. And when you're walking in that light, then people are drawn to that light. And when they're drawn to that light, don't be nervous about them being drawn, because you're saying to yourself, well, I'm not an apostle. You don't even know what you are yet. So don't say what you are or you aren't, because all sons are one or another of things. Now, where they are in the stage of their growth or identity of that call is another thing. Okay? But don't say what you are and what you aren't, because if you remember, Gideon said, I can't do this. What do you mean, mighty man of valor? He said, no, 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 this is who you are. It's the same mentality that Israel had. Now, it's wild, though, because as long as it fit their ego, and this is wild because you got to really, the contradiction is real. Because think about it, it's going to be more of a light for me to get to the promised land and for nations to see me there, to have traversed through the wars and the fights and the battles and overcome Egypt. And all. That's going to be a greater testimony than me going back to Egypt and ruling, or just going back into my house that I was in, that I put the blood over the doorpost. Right? Some people just like, just give me a shack and I'm good. Just give me a little space and don't bother me and I'm straight. No, this is war. You're going to fight through some things. You're going to see some things. You're going to encounter some things. And when you do, you're going to need to know who you are so that you come through that thing in the power of the Spirit, like the Mashiach came through his wilderness experience in the power of the Spirit. Pesach signifies deliverance and redemption. That was our first day. And it's really not a whole day, now that I think about it, because the evening and the morning hour are a day, because that happens, Pesach happens on the 14th. This is something that I just realized today. A couple days ago. Pesach happens on the 14th, right? Okay. So we know, well, here's the reality. Pesach happens at the eve of the 14th. But on the 15th is Feast of Unleavened Bread. So this is just it's just a highlight in the feast time. It's a highlight. It's a reminder of the redemption. It's a reminder of what obedience will bring, how obedience brings deliverance. And it really points to the foundational act of Yah setting his people free from the bondage of whatever your Egypt looks like. It's also a covenant renewal moment. It's a moment for covenant renewal. And if you have not really stepped into the space to really have this communion and this fellowship with Yah, it's just kind of been a hit or a miss. This is the time to step into full relationship. This is the time to step into full covenant, or a time for some of you to renew. It's a time where Yah's people remember the power of his salvation through the blood of the Lamb. That was a powerful sacrifice on that day and when the Mashiach did it, because when he did it, we know he reset all of mankind. We talked about it a little bit this week. You were not born in sin and shaping in iniquity. That was David's experience because he was under the first Adam. You were not born that way. You were born into the righteous lineage. You were born into the righteous family. Okay? And if you identify how to live from the place that's been given to you, this spot that's been handed to you, then you will live a life so abundant. I think about this all the time. He said, I came to give you life and that more abundantly. This was my purpose. My purpose wasn't to come so you could keep living under the same old Adam or Adamic mindset. That's not even a thing for you. After me, there is no more of that unless you choose that mindset. Now, it can be a nature because there is a training or a consumption of false ideas and false identity. That's how that's still coming up. But when you really step into the truth of this thing, when you really step into the Yah's righteous reality, then you're stepping into abundance. You're stepping into overflow. You're stepping into your true, authentic identity. That's it, Elder Vicky, John 10:10. The Feast of Unleavened Bread calls for removal of leaven. We talked about this a little bit, and this is just a Sabbath review. Removal of the leaven. Now, we got two dichotomies here in the scripture. It's not a contradiction, and it's not something that is not consistent, okay? On one hand, you got the removal of the leaven, and that is for the purpose of removing the old identity, removing the old concepts and precept, or was really more, it's not really, I guess, old precepts, old perceptions, because perception is killing so many people, because your perception is only going to go as far as your experience, what you've seen, what you've heard, right? But when you step into some perspective, that's a whole nother story. That can be argued differently. Perception is one thing, but perspective is another. Let's look it up real quick. I want you to see the difference between us just perceiving something or having an idea about something, and then perspective, because the perspective is something that is finalized based on evidence, on all the evidences, right? Let's look at perception real quick. I'm going to define it for you just so you can have an idea of what I'm saying to you. Perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. So there's one thing, and we know that we have both natural and spiritual senses, because the woman at the well said, I perceive you're a prophet. She wasn't just perceiving that with her natural or her spidey senses. She was perceiving that by way of the spirit. Okay. But when you're dealing with perception, it is not the same thing as a perspective. Let's look at perspective. You're going to base that on what you can see, hear, blah, 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 right? But perspective, let's read the definition of perspective. Perspective is a particular attitude toward or a way of regarding something. It's a point of view. See, I can perceive something but not have the right point of view about it, because sometimes what you see ain't always what it is. You know, we were on the freeway today and we saw smoke, and my husband said, oh, it must be a bad accident. But when we got up there, it was a fire on the side of the road. You understand what I'm saying? So you got to understand there's definitely a difference between perception and perspective. And the thing that the Father is bringing us into is his righteous perspective of things, because you can perceive a lot of things just because you're going through, just because you don't like the way that you're being taken. You know, this was Israel's issue, right? They didn't like the way that they were taken. We're hungry. We're thirsty. You brought us out here to kill us. Okay, let's create gods for ourselves. I mean, going as far as saying they're going to create their own gods. Well, they came out of Egypt. That's not a far-fetched a perception. That's not a far-fetched way of thinking, because this is an old paradigm. It's an old way of thinking, right? But the Father wanted to give them his righteous perspective on who they were and where they were going and why they were going there. I encourage you and I challenge you to really consume that, because we're getting ready to head into Shavuot, or what they call Pentecost. And it's such a powerful transition to understand that the discipleship dichotomy starts at this place of deliverance from whatever this old captivity is that's going on with us. But that deliverance is only going to come by way of instruction. And if we are able to follow the instruction in this hour as the sons of Yah, and do the things that he's instructing us to do, and walk in the way that he's instructing us to walk, be in the place that he's instructing us to be. And I know a lot of times you may not even want to be in some of the spaces that you're called to, but guess what? It's what he's calling you to. And so when you begin to see his righteous perspective about it, you can stop poking your lip out, right? You can put your lip in and go ahead and walk it out, because you understand that the blessing of Yah is the place to be. Wherever he is where his blessing is. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to ask for it. It is where he is. It is always in the location that he is. He's never sitting in a space. He's never operating from a space of poverty. He's never operating from a space of not enough, right? We're operating that way oftentimes because we're in time and we haven't yet mastered time or know what to do in time as our tutor, as our governor. But when we begin to master time, we begin to walk in prosperity. We begin to walk in overflow. We begin to walk in abundance, because you got to remember, he said, I'm giving you the power to get wealth. And the reason why I want you to have the wealth, so when you hear people say, everybody ain't supposed to be rich, that's not true. Everybody just doesn't become that because they don't have an idea or an identity about what Father is thinking about. He said, I give you this ability or this power. I want you to be in this space because this is how I establish my covenant. I've made some promises. I've said some things about your life. You know, it's funny to me that we hear all of these things about what the Father is saying about us, but then we never consider that there's some things that we've got to position ourselves for. You know, you might have to do some research. He might give you a word and you might have to research some things to identify, well, how do I position myself for that? I was hearing something today. This is such a powerful thing. I'm just going to throw it out there because I'm really going to have a class, a money class, because the things that I have learned over the last 18 to 20 years is just absolutely nuts. And I'm going to throw this out to you, right? I'm giving you a hack for taxes, right? Now, people are always complaining, and this is why you got to pay attention to what people are saying. And then not only do you have to pay attention to what people are saying in the world system, but you also have to begin to be in the know. This is what made Solomon's kingdom so powerful, because it was a great many things that Solomon knew, and it wasn't a great many things that he didn't know, that he didn't have the wisdom of Yah on. Okay, so here's the thing: people find, they hear people saying, "Oh, well, we're gonna make the rich pay their taxes." And this is what we're going to do. It's not fair for y'all to pay taxes and all these things. But you're not understanding. You're hearing something and you're perceiving something, but you don't have the right perspective to really perceive as you need to perceive. Because the reality is there are all kind of loopholes and things where nobody has to pay that. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. If you position yourself properly, if you have a business, if you become a business owner, entrepreneur, there are all kinds of tax hacks that or tax codes. I'm calling them hacks, but they're tax codes that will allow you to step over and beyond those spaces. Here's a clue for you. So, people like Elon Musk and people like Jeff Bezos, right? There are two particular states. Now, I think one of them was in where they both. I know Elon was in California originally, so he was in Silicon Valley. I don't remember where Jeff was. I don't remember where he came from. But here's the thing: the reality is, the reason why these people don't wind up paying taxes, and you say, well, what does this have to do with this? This has everything to do with this, because as a son, you have to have the right perspective. And when the father's calling you into something, you need to know how to walk in it. That means you might have to do some research to walk in the thing that he's commanding over your life. He's not going to just shower it down on your head. It's not some magical situation. This ain't Lucky Charms. You got to position yourself for what he's doing. So here's the thing. Florida and Texas are two states where you can pass, what do they call it? A peace. They're called peace states, where if you started a business in any other place and you got to a space where it was time to pay specific taxes or whatever, you could just move your whole situation to one of these states and avoid paying taxes altogether. Now, here's the other hack, because I used to do stocks with one of my former handlers, right? And I wish I had known this then. The reality is, you could buy, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. You could buy $10,000 worth of Amazon stock. Somebody say, why use 10,000? I ain't got 10,000, but you could have 10,000. It's not that hard to have. It really isn't. But if you took $10,000 and put it in an Amazon stock, I'm not telling you to put your money in Amazon stocks. I'm just giving you an example. Okay. If you put your money there in Amazon stocks, $10,000, and the stock went up, right? Well, before the stock goes up, you could actually go to the bank and get a loan for $5,000 against the stock. Who's teaching us this kind of stuff? Nobody's teaching us this. And exactly the same way, from a spiritual perspective, nobody is teaching us how to redeem the coupon that was given at the sacrifice, the final sacrifice. Nobody's showing us these things. Discipleship is very important, because if you're not discipled, you don't know how to determine the walk. You don't know how to walk it out. You got to be discipled. You cannot just be dropped in the midst of something and say, okay, now go. And that's a lot of what we're seeing. People just come in and they say, okay, now go. We're going to put you on the usher board. We're going to put you in the choir. We're going to put you on the praise team. That's church stuff. We're talking about kingdom requires discipleship. It's the same way with these other systems. It requires that we have understanding and identity on how things work. The same thing with the credit game, which I got out of a whole lot of years ago. Upgrade, exactly. Whole lot of years ago, because I was just frustrated. I'm like, how in the world you call somebody a deadbeat that pays their bills? This doesn't make sense. The father said, why are you frustrated? Just learn the game and play the game better than they play it. That's all this is about. And what we've got to do in this hour is identify adversary's game and play the game better than he's playing. If you know that you wasn't born into sin, then you no longer have to even listen to what he's saying. You no longer have to, what does the word say? Take captive every thought and bring it to the obedience of your appointment. Somebody said, oh, it says obedience of Christ. I told you that's not a last name. Christ deals with appointment. Bring it into the obedience. So I say it like this: if it don't fit my purpose, it don't fit my life. If it don't line up with the purpose that I'm called to, then it doesn't have anything to do with me. But you have to walk through these things and constantly, as AK said, upgrade. You got to constantly allow yourself to be upgraded. But what does the religious institution do? What does the religious industrial complex do? You get in, you get comfortable, you get settled, and now you feel like you've arrived at some place, and you haven't arrived anywhere because it's faith to faith and glory to glory. This is a moving train. It's not a sitting train. This thing is a glory train. That means it's always moving. It's always advancing, just like the technology that we see every day. Always moving, always advancing. I love this time. I love this time. I'm waiting on some questions here. I'm going to give you 5 key highlights that underscore the prophetic nature of what we talked about this week regarding the becomer's identity as sons of Yah and sons of men, right? As well as their manifestation into this new creation paradigm that we talked about. Here's the first one. The Exodus is a metaphor for spiritual transformation. Yeah. Passover represents, or Pesach, a radical transition from the old to the new. This, at the beginning of the year, what do we see? This is why he put it right there at spring, because we're looking at the ground one day. It's old, it's got the snow on it. It's last year's news, right? But then all of a sudden, something starts happening when the snow melts. Something starts happening when the season shifts. We start seeing stuff spring up and spring out. The trees start blooming. I mean, all kinds of things just start being renewed. It's a radical transformation. It's a radical transition from the old to the new. And if you're a plant person, if you're a gardener or anything like that, you understand that a lot of times from year to year, things get bigger and better. It's the same thing with fruit trees, right? Sometimes you got to wait 2 or 3 years, sometimes 5 years, depending on what kind of tree it is, before that fruit begins to start manifesting, right? But year to year, the manifestation is greater and greater. I remember living in St. Louis many years ago, and there was a tree behind this gate at this school, and it looked like the tree was just looking like it was crying for help. Child. Looked like it was just begging us to come pick the apples off this tree. And so we went to the house and we got some baskets and we got a bunch of stuff, and we jumped the gate and we went to go pick them apples at that school. You hear me? School wasn't in session, so I guess it was after I think it was a summertime. So, but we hopped that gate and we took those baskets and all that stuff and we began to pick the fruit off that tree. Let me tell you something. It was hard to pick the first year because it was real high up. So we had to climb up in the tree. Me and my children, I'm trying to tell you, it was amazing. We climbed up in the tree, we picked fruit, and that fruit was good. We ate it. It was weirdly shaped though, oddly shaped. And so a lot of times people are saying, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable. This is a little weird. I know it's weird because you're not in charge or control of how things are shaping up or how things are being formed. But if you just allow yourself to continue to be picked, if you allow your fruit to continue to be accessed, right, then what will happen over time is the beauty begins to come through a lot better. Then next year, let me tell you something. That tree was not only even more overburdened with fruit, but the fruit was round. The first year looked like pears almost. The apples looked like pears because it hadn't been picked. And we've been walking through seasons where many of the sons of Yah have not been picked. But this is the season of the transformation and the shifting, the trading or the switching of guards. It's time for you to be picked, but you will have had to have taken the time and the proximity of your Father so that you'll know what to say, what to do, and know how to align yourself with his will. I love this. Here, okay, the Exodus is as a metaphor for spiritual transformation. Y'all got that? Crossing the Red Sea, we see that in the scripture in what they call the New Testament. They say all were baptized in Moshe's in this Exodus. All were baptized under Moshe. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. And that's a reference to the Red Sea. That's a reference to them coming through the waters, through a place that should have been for most people, or would have been for most people, an impossible thing. They get to the waters. Not only did their enemy thrust them out, but their enemy said, "Psych, I was just playing." No, I want you back. And this is a thing that most people don't understand. So we're talking about discipleship too, right? So you get this deliverance, you begin to follow the instruction, you begin to see the love of Yah and how he covers you and protects you. You get thrusted out, you begin to move in a direction, and then the thing that you got delivered from begins to try to creep up on you again. Oh, no, it didn't. I love it because the Father said, these that you see right now, you'll never see again. It's one of my prophetic signposts. These Egyptians that you see, you're going to never see them again. He's drowning out the things that were once an issue for us. He's drowning out the things that were once a antagonist for the sons of Yah. There's only a season where the adversary is able to ride over the saints. There's only a season, because Daniel says in Daniel chapter 7, I believe it is, or Daniel chapter 10, it says that the kingdom will be given to the saints of the Most High. Yeah, it's going to be some times when you're challenged. Yes, it's going to be some times when it looks like you're not coming through this thing properly. But the saints of the Most High will be given the kingdom. Will be given the kingdom. Look, the other thing that we saw was the seed of the woman. I'm supposed to be pulling up this verse. I'm about to pull it up right now. The seed of the woman. That's such a powerful conversation. The seed of the woman crushing the seed of the serpent. That's a powerful conversation. And if you ever begin to understand as a woman who you really are in the kingdom, this is, yeah, when you realize who you really are as a woman in the kingdom, you're gonna be something else. Because the reality is a lot of religious industrial complexes and a lot of different, so you got this one extreme to the other. So in the world system, you got women that want to be feminists, right? And they talk about this feminist movement and how the woman is rising and all this. The woman has never been beneath anybody. The woman has always been in a position that expresses who she is and this glory. Holy Spirit is a feminine conversation. It's a feminine identity, right? And this is why the woman is often the one that protects the man by way of having this, what they call intuition, because she's close to the father in a way that allows her to protect his future, right? So women are often like Holy Spirit to their husband. It's a feminine term. Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now. All were baptized. Yeah. In the cloud. That's a whole conversation in and of itself. I'm going to try my best to stay away from that. All were baptized. Mm-mm. Did y'all put any questions in the section yet? No questions? Mm-mm. Okay, here we go. I am doing my best to pull it up right now. Yeah, here we go. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And we're all baptized unto Moshe in the cloud and in the sea. Ooh, that's a conversation there, because we started talking a little bit about the cloud, right? And when you begin to understand the cloud is more than what we talking about, the clouds out in the sky. That's not the conversation. You've heard the term a great cloud of witnesses. So this has something to do with the personalities that the Father has deemed worthy to be able to have influence in spaces. The cloud, the cloud influences things. The cloud influences temperature. It influences rain. It influences rainbows. It influences a lot of activity, right? And so this is what these sons that have been deemed worthy to be able to influence situations. All were baptized unto Moshe. It didn't say unto the Mashiach, did it? It didn't say unto Yah. It said unto Moshe. In other words, there was something that he was carrying, and he brought them into a place because of what was on his life. And this is the same concept with the sons of Yah. This is why Paul got into his conversation about y'all doing too much, though, because now everybody wants to make it an ego thing or some kind of festival of who you were baptized to, or who baptized you, right? But if you were baptized of someone or into a situation, you should also have the character of, right? And so this is the thing. It says all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. I'm going to read a little bit past that, and I'm going to read before it so that we have some context for it, because that's important. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, right? Ignorant, ignoring things, how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea. This is a thing. This is so that we avoid the mistake of denying or rejecting the Father and allow ourselves to be taken whatever direction he's taken us. So this is why this is being brought up. And all were baptized unto Moshe in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was appointment. See, this is something that I really can't stand about church stuff. Because they've heard something a certain way, they take everything and try to make it something that is not written. Do you know when Son of God is mentioned, Son of Man are mentioned, it's mentioned in more than just the case of the Mashiach. So there were sons of Yah and Son of Man before the Mashiach. But we keep attributing only those conversations to him. He is the man that was the prototype. He is the prototype for who every son should be, and the prototype for this new creation where we are both fully God and fully man. And I know that's going to throw a lot of religious people off, but guess what? Until you learn how to walk in your identity, you're going to keep walking in this false reality that religion is giving you. It's just what it is. I'm not saying that you're Yah, that you sit in his seat, but even with Joseph, we see this concept, and we see it with Daniel as well, where these kings gave over their authority to the sons because they identified with the fact that they needed, they wanted to collaborate with them to get the job done. It's the same way that the Father does. He collaborates with his creation to get the job done. Love broke the chains. Okay, I'll check them out, AK. Women out of Detroit talking about women. Oh, I need to check them out because I got some things that I need to talk to some women about for sure. So the seed of the woman and the manifestation of the sons. I think that's where I'd have a question, because you mentioned Christ appointed. So how is that related to times and seasons for his kingdom, like the purpose behind it? Okay, so how it's related to time and season is because he came in a very specific age, at a very specific time, just like you were born at a very specific time to accomplish a very specific work. The work that he was appointed to or assigned to finish was the work of the sacrifice and also the work of the resetting of sons. How this has to do with times and seasons is the fact that we are now in the epoch that we are in, or in the age that we are in, and we're to be carrying out the purpose for which he was sacrificed. And the purpose behind that sacrifice was to bring us into the place of freedom. So walking in the identity that we were born for at this point, or born out of, which is this new Adam, or the second Adam, then we are following the purpose that we were given. And that purpose might relate to so many things, like your gift or your calling, whatever that is. It all still kind of comes back in alignment with, this is the ultimate purpose, is that we begin to be placed in the specific places that the Father is calling us to be a light, to be a draw, because nations come to the light and kings to the brightness of our rising. We don't have to go really do a whole lot of theatrics to get people to see. We just need to be where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there. Like people, there's this, okay, so we order our groceries online sometimes, if that's, a thing, right? It's okay, because I've done it. But there are times when the Father's like, no, you need to get up and go to the grocery store. Why is he telling me to get up and go to the grocery store when I can order my groceries online? Because there's a purpose. Anything that the Father is saying to us is laced with the purposes of Yah. Something as simple as get up and go to the grocery store when I can order them online has something to do with his purpose. I remember being younger, and I would lay in my bed first thing in the morning, and I'm getting back to that place now, and I would wake up and say, what are we doing today, Father? Where are we going? I don't know if I'm going to be on foot or if I'm going to be in the vehicle, but wherever it is that he's assigning me to go, or wherever it is he's assigning me to be, because it's not just a going, go here specifically, but sometimes we just kind of feel a leading. Okay, I need to go, or something that you automatically comes up, just something just randomly comes up. Oh, I need some chapstick, or whatever it is. You understand? All of these things are laced with purpose, because wherever you are, if you're carrying a kingdom that is unshakable, then that kingdom should always be expressed, even if it's just in a hello, even if it's just in a smile. It's purposed. And so you walk that purpose out because of who you are, not because of who you're trying to be or become, but because of who you already are and are becoming. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying that Christ is not a last name. I keep telling people that that's not a last name. Christ simply means appointment. And a lot of people go first to the anointing part. And yes, that's a process, but nobody is anointed without an appointment. Saul was anointed because of the appointment of king. Okay. The Levites were anointed for the appointment of leading as the priest, the high priest, or the priests of Israel. Nobody is anointed without an appointment. So it ultimately means appointment. I hope you got that. 3, new creation. Oh, well, let me finish the seed of the woman and the manifesting sons. Sons of Yah, sons of man. Revealed throughout the biblical narrative, right? The seed of the woman prophecy, we know that's in Genesis chapter 3, speaks of the victory of appointment over the serpent. In other words, there is a victory of sons, of seed, the seed of the woman. That's not just one seed, because we know that we are the master, or the Mashiach was the firstborn of many sons. So that appointment has to be met, regardless of whatever oppositions or obstacles or objections that darkness might bring. There's this unfolding of sonship that carries through to the becomers who just walk in this authority, and we just kind of walk over that kind of stuff. The enemy is our footstool. We understand that. We understand that we're seated in heavenly places, far above principalities and powers and all the works of darkness. We understand that our goal and that our job, just as the Mashiach, was to expose and to overthrow the works of the enemies, to destroy the work of the adversary. Okay? So the Son of God, the sons of God, are people who embody both human and divine nature. Now, why human? And I'm not talking about human from the perspective of just living ratchet. No, we have flesh, right? We understand that this is an earth suit, but we walk out our spiritual assignments. Fully human and fully godly, walking in alignment with the divine will of Yah. I hope that answered your question, though. Number 3, the new creation paradigm. We know old things are passed away. So this Feast of Unleavened Bread is calling for the removal of the leaven, and we talked a little bit about that. This symbolizes the removal of the old nature. The old nature was what they were dealing with, but this is what the Mashiach did when he became the Passover, when he became the final sacrifice. It was a transition from the old to the new. Okay? From the old nature, which was the Adamic nature, the first Adam of sin, to the believing nature, the believer, the Son of Yah, the righteous seed. And this aligns with this concept of becomers that we've been talking about. Of course, the Enochian breed. And why we're talking about it from that perspective, because Enoch, just like Elijah, was and was not. But he never died. They never died. I believe they may be probably the 2 witnesses spoken of, or leading the charge of that witness, because it may not be singular either. But I believe they're part of that conversation and that manifestation. Could be Moshe. I don't know. Could be Moshe and Elijah, because they were both, Moshe and Elijah were on the Mount of Transfiguration, right? Neither here nor there. We will see. The new creation paradigm means we no longer identify with the old self, but we're living as those who are made in the image of the Mashiach, made in the image of appointment. We understand that the appointment is divine, and we're gonna operate from that image, fully empowered to operate and to move between both earthly and spiritual realms as the sons of Yah. You say, well, how do you do that? Well, you'll learn it as you grow, as you are in proximity to the Father, as you understand what worship is, as you understand first what discipleship is, because can't nobody worship without discipleship. Nobody can purely worship. You say, well, how can you say that? Well, the woman at the well thought she knew what she was doing, but the master had to come and tell her, you don't know what you're doing. That's not how that's done. The Father's looking for those that will worship him in spirit and truth, the spirit of truth. And what does that look like? It looks like having clarity on who he is and knowing what he wants. He wasn't interested in you going up to the mountain. That's the ritual of things. He's not interested in the ritual of things. That is not why we have these feast days. That is not why the Moeds exist. The Moeds exist for us to be able to get what the spiritual bulletin of heaven is saying for the season that we're walking in, for the new year, and for each part of that year, for each season that we're in that year. Number 4, the Mashiach as the fulfillment of Passover, which we've talked about. He is the Lamb of Yah, which took away, it says, which taketh away the sins of the world. He fulfilled the role of the Passover lamb for everybody. According to the scripture, it was by these stripes that we were healed. So if we're living any other way, then we're living beneath what was commanded. And we need to take a second look at our identity. We need to take a second look at our reality and see if the reality is aligning itself with what the Father is saying. And again, that might mean that we have some things to do, some things that we must work on, some things that we have to study to know, how do I step out of this way of life because it doesn't align with what I'm called to be. It doesn't align with who I am. How do I step out of this and step into the abundance of the life that I've been called to live? Okay. The Master's resurrection marks the beginning of a new creation, and it signals the sons of Yah being raised to walk in newness of life, victory over death, sin, and the powers of darkness. Number 5, the manifesting sons of Yah in the earth. There's a prophetic promise in Romans chapter 8:19 that speaks to the creation eagerly waiting, this panting, this groaning, this travail, awaiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. That's what it says, the sons of Yah. The earth is waiting for you to rise because it needs some instructions. You forgot that I told you Genesis, in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, there's this conversation and this collaboration with Yah amongst the gods, and it's let us make. They begin to recreate. I call it recreation because it was already there. Yah had already instituted and created it. Now he's going to give the rights of co-creation to his sons in that hour, the gods, right? And then he gives the right of dominion and replenishing and all of the other things to his son in the garden, another God. So this one that came to try to bring confusion and to bring the whisper was simply coming to talk him out of his authority, to talk him out of his dominion, because he already had it. And it's the same concept with the Mashiach. You've already been given it. Now, this adversarial situation, whether internal or external, because a lot of it is internal based on things we've heard, things we've taught, things that people have said to us or over us, right? Come to try to take you out of the identity, the authentic divine identity, and put you into some other reality. Okay? But this identity calls for alignment with Yah's eternal purpose. And it's a commitment to walking out your heavenly identity in the world and manifesting that kingdom right now, not on no other side. This don't have nothing to do with the sweet by and by. There's something that we're called to do right here, right now. Okay? I love y'all. I'm not going to hold y'all long. I just wanted to kind of do a review before we go into day 8. Before we go into day 8, guys, you guys know I love day 8. It's just going to be a culmination of this thing with the sons. That 8 is something else. You know what I found fascinating too in this season? Father kept talking about this Tav, which we know is the mark. We talked a little bit about the mark, right? And we know there's a mark of Yah and there's a mark of the beast, right? But this mark, this Tav is actually the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, okay? And we hear the Master talking all the time. We heard the Father talking. I am the beginning and the end. I'm the first and the last, okay? That Tav is a marking that signifies something is at the end of a thing. Something is finished. And so he's been talking to me a lot about that mark. So we'll talk about that some more tomorrow. And he's been talking to me a lot about the 7, which is where we are. We're in the 7th day. How that 7 lines up so many times. But he also been saying a lot about 14. And so we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well. It's quite a few conversations we need to have about a couple of numbers that keep coming up in this hour. But I'm excited to have this conversation with you tomorrow. I'm not going to hold you much longer today. I pray that you got some answers for some things that you have been looking for. But I want you to come with questions tomorrow too. That's fine. AK, let me know if your question was answered. Let me know if that was sufficient answer for your question. And I would love for you, if you would like to be on the broadcast tomorrow, just kind of share what you got this week, and you can definitely ask your questions live. I don't mind that. That'll be fun. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I want you to send me an email. Send me an email so I can send you the link for tomorrow. Yes. Okay. That's confirmation. Good deal. Good deal. Good deal. I sent my email in the link in the chat. I want you, some of you guys, to join us tomorrow. Just send me an email so I can send you the link for tomorrow. It'll probably be sometime in the afternoon. So don't beat me up if it doesn't come first thing in the morning or tonight. Okay. But I look forward to having a conversation with you tomorrow on the live. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what the Father is doing. I want to hear what He's done in you on this week. And then I want you to be able to ask your questions live. I'm probably only going to take about 5 people. So whoever, first come, first serve. Right. First come, first serve. Listen, I love you to life, and I want you to remember you're blessed. Don't you forget it. And I also want you to remember that the body is not a me thing, it's a we thing. That's the mentality that every son should have. It's not just about me, it's about us, right? Us fitly joined together, operating and doing the thing that the Father has called us to do for the sake of the kingdom being advanced. I love you so much. We'll see you tomorrow at 6:45. Until then, shalom, shalom.